I never forget parent-teacher conferences, never miss my daughter's tuition deadlines, and certainly never forget my own birthday. But that night, between the scraping of knives and the clinking of wine glasses, my parents told everyone at the table that I'd never amount to anything, and the dining room fell silent as if someone had just switched off the engine of my entire life. If you think those were the cruelest words spoken that evening, wait until you see what I did next. My name is Laura Bennett, and I've always been the one who gives at 43. I wake up every morning at 5:45 sharp in my Hawthorne Heights apartment, where minimalism isn't a design choice but a reflection of how much I've poured into everyone else's life instead of my own. The coffee maker gurgles while I scan through 23 unread emails on my laptop quarterly reports for Northfield Analytics, where I've been executive director for 7 years. The wall clock ticks steadily, a metronome to my routine of sacrifice. This morning, like every morning, I stand at my desk, a sleek piece of reclaimed wood that cost me $3,000, but feels worth every penny because it's one of the few things I bought purely for myself. Scattered across it are legal documents I've been reviewing, invoices to approve, and a framed photo from my brother Michael's graduation, the one I paid $48,000 for, though he's never once acknowledged it. I wasn't always this bitter. There was a time when writing those checks felt like love. When Michael needed tuition for Northwestern, I emptied my savings without hesitation. When my younger sister Emma wanted to start her boutique, I co-signed the loan and covered 6 months of rent when the business struggled. When my parents, Evelyn and Martin Blake, faced foreclosure in 2018, I wrote a check for $32,000 to save their house. I remember the exact amount because I'd been saving it for a down payment on my own home, a dream I buried that day. The Blakes never called it help. They called it what family does, though that philosophy seemed to flow in only one direction. At family dinners, while I paid for the wine and picked up the check, they'd regale relatives with stories of Michael's success in tech, Emma's entrepreneurial spirit, and then pause when someone asked about me. Laura, well, she works hard, my mother would say, her tone suggesting that was both all I did and all I'd ever be. Last month's dinner was supposed to be different. My cousin Patricia was visiting from Seattle with her new husband, and my parents insisted on hosting at Marcello's, the Italian place where a glass of wine costs $18, and they always mysteriously forget their credit card. I arrived 15 minutes early, as always, and watched them sweep in fashionably late, my mother's pearls catching the light as she air-kissed everyone except me. The conversation flowed like expensive wine until Patricia asked about my recent promotion to executive director. Before I could answer, my father's fork clinked against his plate. Promotion. He laughed, actually laughed. Laura's been in the same type of job since college, pushing papers, crunching numbers. He turned to Patricia's husband. Some people just plateau early. You know, not everyone's meant for greatness. My mother nodded, adding her practiced sigh. We've accepted that Laura will never really amount to anything significant. She's reliable, though, like a good sedan, nothing fancy, but it gets you from A to B. The table went silent. Patricia's smile froze. Emma suddenly found her napkin fascinating. Michael checked his phone. And I sat there, feeling something inside me break, not shatter dramatically, but crack, like ice under pressure, creating a perfect fault line through everything I'd believed about family and obligation. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection, the responsible daughter, the safety net, the one who'd never amount to anything. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't explode or confront them with tears and accusations. No, I would be methodical, patient, and thorough. If they wanted to diminish me to nothing, I would show them exactly what nothing could do when it decided to become something they'd never forget. Back in my apartment that night, I opened my laptop and began what would become my obsession, documenting everything. The wine from dinner sat untouched as I pulled up 5 years of bank statements. Each line item told a story of my generosity and their greed. March 15th, 2019. $8,000 for mom's emergency medical procedure that I later learned was cosmetic. August 3rd, 2020. $15,000 to Dad for a business opportunity that turned out to be gambling debts. November 28th, 2021. $6,000 for Emma's car repairs while she posted photos from Cabo on Instagram. The numbers blurred as I scrolled, not from tears but from the sheer volume. Total transfers to my parents over 7 years, $173,000. To Michael, $48,000 for school, plus another $12,000 in loans never repaid. To Emma, $31,000. I'd been their ATM, and the receipt history was staggering. But money was just the surface. I searched my email for family dinner and found 43 instances over 2 years where I'd been publicly humiliated. My Gmail archive became a museum of casual cruelty. There was the Thanksgiving where Mom told her sister I was too focused on work to understand real success. The Easter where Dad explained to the entire table that some people were meant to be worker bees, not queens. The 4th of July barbecue where they actually laughed when Cousin Jerome asked if I was seeing anyone. Mom responding, "Who would date someone so predictable?" I created a spreadsheet god, how they'd mock me for that, cataloging each incident with dates, witnesses, and direct quotes. The patterns emerged like a diagnosis. They needed me financially but resented me for it. My success threatened their narrative that I was the family failure, so they worked to dim my light every chance they got. At 2:30 in the morning, I called Graham Lowell, a lawyer who'd helped with Northfield's corporate structure. "I need to know about financial abuse," I said without preamble. "And what constitutes fraud within families?" Graham didn't miss a beat. "Oh, having trouble with relatives. Let me guess they've been bleeding you dry while treating you like dirt." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen this story before. "Keep records of everything, every transaction, every communication. And Laura, watch for escalation. When entitled people feel their source drying up, they get creative." His words proved prophetic. 3 days later, I discovered an email in my mother's sent folder. She'd forgotten I still had access to her account from when I helped her with tech issues. She'd written to Dr. Margaret Helm, a local psychiatrist, inquiring about concerns regarding my daughter's mental state and asking about procedures for family intervention in financial matters. The email was dated 2 days after that dinner, right after I'd stopped responding to their texts asking for money for Dad's investment opportunity. More digging revealed worse. My father had contacted my bank, pretending to be concerned about unusual transaction patterns on my account. He'd tried to add himself as a security contact, claiming I'd been acting erratically and might need supervision. The bank's fraud department had flagged it and notified me, but I'd dismissed it as a mistake. Now I understood they were building a case that I was mentally unstable, probably hoping to gain control of my assets. I found their playbook in a series of texts between them, sent to the wrong group chat by accident. "She's worth at least $2 million with that job and no kids," Dad had written. "If we can establish concern for her mental health, Emma could be appointed financial guardian. Dr. Helm owes me a favor from the country club board." My mother's response chilled me. "We've given her everything. It's time she gave back properly. I'll start documenting her strange behavior at family events. Everyone already thinks she's odd." They were planning to steal from me while destroying my reputation, using my own family as witnesses to my supposed instability. The woman who'd never amount to anything was worth $2 million, and they wanted every penny. I closed my laptop at 4 in the morning, my coffee cold. My anger crystallized into something harder than diamond. They wanted to play with documentation. I'd show them what real evidence looked like. The transformation from victim to strategist happened in Graham Lowell's office on a rainy Tuesday at 9:15 sharp. "Your parents are amateurs," he said, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. "But dangerous amateurs. They're trying to establish a pattern of mental instability to justify financial conservatorship. We need to get ahead of this." That afternoon, I hired Iris Marlowe, a private investigator recommended by Graham. She was nothing like the PIs in movies. No trench coat, no cigarette, just a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with an iPad and the demeanor of a librarian who'd seen too much. "Family cases are the ugliest," she said, scrolling through my documentation. They know exactly where to twist the knife. I'll need full access financial records, social media, everything. Done, I said, sliding her a retainer check for $10,000. My parents would have been apoplectic knowing I spent that much on anything for myself. Next came Sam Carter, a forensic accountant who specialized in financial abuse cases. His office smelled like coffee and paper, walls lined with certificates that meant he could find money trails in a hurricane. Your parents are structuring their requests strategically, he explained, pointing to a pattern in the transfers. See these amounts just under $10,000 each time, spread across multiple accounts. They're trying to avoid federal reporting requirements while creating a paper trail that you're giving them money erratically, supporting their instability narrative. The chess game had begun, and I needed to control the board. My first move was scheduling a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation with Dr. James Roth, the most respected psychiatrist in the state. I want a full workup, I told him. Cognitive assessment, personality evaluation, everything. I need ironclad documentation of my mental fitness. Planning for something? He asked carefully. Protecting myself from something, I corrected. The evaluation took 6 hours across 3 sessions. Dr. Roth's report was unequivocal. Ms. Bennett displays exceptional cognitive function, emotional stability, and no signs of any psychiatric disorder. Her decision-making capacity is intact and superior to population norms. I had it notarized, copied in triplicate, and stored in 3 separate locations. Meanwhile, Iris was earning her fee. She'd uncovered a goldmine of hypocrisy. My father, the man who called me a worker bee, had been fired from his last 3 jobs for underperformance. He'd been living off my mother's inheritance and my money for a decade. My mother, who proclaimed my lack of ambition at every gathering, hadn't worked since 1995. The medical emergency I'd paid $8,000 for Iris found the receipt a tummy tuck and facial reconstruction at a Beverly Hills clinic. But the revelation that made me actually laugh alone in my apartment, was about Emma's boutique, the one I'd supported, the symbol of her entrepreneurial spirit. It had never made a profit, not once. She'd been funneling my loan payments directly into her personal account while claiming business expenses. The IRS would be very interested in that information. Sam Carter constructed a timeline that was devastating in its clarity. Every time you achieved something promotion, bonus, recognition, they asked for money within 72 hours. He noted, it's psychological manipulation, making your success about their needs. And look here. He pulled up a graph. The requests escalated whenever you showed independence. That vacation you took alone to Costa Rica, they had a crisis that cost you $6,000, your company award dinner, your father needed emergency surgery that turned out to be elective. The plan crystallized over coffee at 4:45 one morning. Graham, Sam, Iris, and I sat in my apartment, the city dark outside, plotting something that felt like justice but tasted like revenge. We let them hang themselves, Graham proposed. You re-engage, act normal, even vulnerable. They'll accelerate their plan. When they do, we document everything. I've installed legal recording software on your phone, Iris added. Our state is one-party consent. Every conversation is evidence. Sam had prepared financial safeguards. I've helped you establish a trust that's legally airtight. Your assets are protected, but it won't be visible until you choose to reveal it. To them, you're still their golden goose. What about the mental health angle? I asked. Graham smiled. Doctor, Roth's evaluation is dated 2 weeks before your mother's first email to Dr. Helm. You were proactively responsible about your mental health. They look like conspirators. The team was assembled. The evidence was mounted. The protections were in place. All I had to do now was walk back into the lion's den and let them think they were winning. My parents had spent years telling everyone I'd never amount to anything. They were about to learn that nothing, when properly motivated, could become their everything, their downfall, their humiliation, their complete undoing. The reconciliation text I sent my mother was crafted like a forgery, perfectly mimicking my old, eager-to-please self. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said at dinner. Maybe you're right about me. I'd love to talk. Could we have lunch? The response came in 12 minutes. Of course, darling, we've been so worried about you. Marcello's, Thursday at noon. I arrived early, placing a handwritten letter on the table where she'd sit carefully aged with coffee stains, dated a week prior. The content was precise bait. I've been feeling overwhelmed lately. Some financial decisions seem so complicated. I'm thinking of hiring an auditor to help me understand where all my money goes. Maybe I've been too generous, too trusting. I watched from across the restaurant as she found it, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and calculation. She photographed it with her phone evidence. She thought of my instability. What she didn't know was that Iris had positioned herself at the next table, recording everything. Laura, sweetheart, my mother cooed when I returned, the letter now tucked in her purse. You look tired. Have you been sleeping? Not well, I admitted, letting my hand shake slightly as I lifted my water glass. Work has been stressful, and I've been having these concerns about my finances. Her eyes lit up like a predator spotting weakness. Perhaps you need help managing things. Your father and I could, maybe, I interrupted softly. I just feel like money keeps disappearing, like someone might be taking advantage of me. The panic flashed across her face before she could stop it. That afternoon, Iris reported that my mother had made 16 phone calls, including 3 to Dr. Helm and 4 to my father. The trap was working. 2 days later, my father invited me to dinner at their house, a command performance with Emma and Michael present. Family meeting, he'd called it. I arrived to find them arranged like an intervention, my supposed loved ones ready to dissect my sanity for their profit. Laura, we're concerned, my father began, his voice dripping false sympathy. You've seemed confused lately, talking about auditors, making accusations about money disappearing. We think you need help, Emma added, not meeting my eyes. Professional help? Michael, to his minimal credit, stayed silent, but his presence was endorsement enough. I let my voice quaver. I don't understand. I just wanted to get my finances in order, which is why we've taken the liberty of scheduling an appointment with Dr. Helm, my mother announced triumphantly. She specializes in financial competency evaluations. There it was, their play, exactly as predicted. I widened my eyes in perfect mimicry of distress. Financial competency. But I manage millions at work. Work is different from personal life, my father interrupted. You've given away so much money, Laura. It's not normal. Dr. Helm can help determine if you need support in these decisions. I stood up shakily. I need to think about this. As I left, I accidentally dropped a folder from my bag, copies of bank statements with certain transactions highlighted, the ones showing my transfers to them. My mother snatched it up before I'd even closed the door. They'd think I was building a case, but too disorganized to execute it. Perfect. Iris's surveillance bore fruit within hours. My parents contacted 3 different lawyers that evening, trying to find one who'd help them establish conservatorship. They were refused by 2 even ambulance chasers have limits, but the third, a sketchy operator named Dennis Vance, agreed to meet them. They're accelerating, Iris reported at 11:30 that night. Your father withdrew $8,000 in cash, probably Vance's retainer. Your mother has been creating backdated emails about your concerning behavior, sending them to herself from different accounts to establish a timeline. Amateur hour, but dangerous if unchallenged. The masterstroke came when Sam discovered they'd been accessing my credit report illegally, using information they'd gathered when I'd lived with them briefly during college. That's federal fraud, he said with satisfaction. They just upgraded from civil to criminal liability. I prepared my final bait and email to my entire family expressing confusion about some financial matters and mentioning I'd found a wonderful financial advisor who was helping me restructure everything for the future. I mentioned a family gathering for my parents' anniversary next month where I'd share some important news about my assets. The response was immediate and predictable. Within 3 hours, my mother had forwarded my email to Dr. Helm with the subject line, "Evidence of deteriorating judgment urgent." My father called Dennis Vance. Emma started researching financial guardianship for adults on her laptop. Iris had remote access to all their devices now. They thought they were closing in on their prize. In reality, they were walking into a carefully constructed trap, one where every move they made added another bar to their own cage. The anniversary party would be in 3 weeks. They were planning their final move to declare me incompetent and seize control. I was planning something far more devastating: the complete and public destruction of their carefully maintained facades. They wanted my money so badly they were willing to destroy me for it. Soon, they'd learn that the daughter who would never amount to anything had amounted to exactly what they deserved: their worst nightmare. The anniversary party was held at the Grandview Country Club, the same place where my father pretended he could afford membership while I secretly paid his dues. 112 guests gathered in the main ballroom at 7 sharp, including distant relatives, my parents' friends, and several prominent community members they'd spent years impressing with lies about their success. I arrived precisely at 7:20, wearing a simple black dress and carrying a leather portfolio. My parents barely concealed their irritation. They'd expected me earlier, probably to corner me before witnesses arrived. Instead, I'd timed my entrance for maximum visibility. "Laura, darling, you made it," my mother chirped, her voice carrying across the room. "We were worried you might be too." Overwhelmed. The word choice was deliberate, planting seeds of my supposed instability. Several guests glanced over with concern. Perfect. Dinner progressed with manufactured normalcy until the speeches began. My father stood first, champagne glass raised, regaling the crowd with stories of their 40 years together, their successes, their wonderful children. When he mentioned me, it was dismissive. And Laura, our eldest, still plugging away at her little job. Bless her heart. Then came my moment. "I'd like to say something," I announced, standing slowly. The room quieted, my mother's smile freezing as I walked to the microphone they'd set up for toasts. 40 years is quite an achievement," I began, my voice steady. "It takes dedication, commitment, and in my parents' case, a very creative relationship with the truth." The silence was instant and absolute. My father started to stand, but I raised my hand. "Please, let me finish. You've all heard their version for years. Time for some facts." I opened my portfolio and pulled out the first document. This is a bank statement from March 15th, 2019. $8,000 transferred from my account to theirs for Mom's emergency surgery. I held up the second paper. "This is a receipt from Beverly Hills Cosmetic Center for an elective tummy tuck on the same date." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's face drained of color. "August 3rd, 2020, I continued, pulling out more papers. $15,000 for Dad's business opportunity. Here's the real destination: Darby Lane Casino, where he lost it all in 6 hours. "You're sick," my father shouted. "This is exactly what we were afraid of." "Speaking of which," I interrupted, connecting my phone to the venue's AV system. Iris had arranged that earlier. "Let's hear what you're really afraid of." The recording filled the ballroom, my parents' voices crystal clear. "She's worth at least $2 million with that job and no kids. If we can establish concern for her mental health, Emma could be appointed financial guardian." The crowd was frozen, watching a family demolition in real time. But I wasn't done. Here's correspondence between my mother and Dr. Margaret Helm, plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent, dated 2 days after I stopped giving them money. I displayed the emails on the screen behind me. "And here's my psychiatric evaluation from Dr. James Roth, dated 2 weeks before their first attempt, showing perfect mental health." Emma tried to slip toward the exit, but I called out, "Emma, don't leave. Everyone should know about your boutique, the one I funded that never existed as a real business. The IRS has those documents now." Michael finally spoke. "Laura, this is cruel." "Cruel?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Let me show you cruel. This is a recording from Marcello's restaurant last month." My mother's voice filled the room. "We've accepted that Laura will never really amount to anything significant. She's reliable, though. Like a good sedan, nothing fancy. But it gets you from A to B." I looked directly at Patricia, my cousin from Seattle, who'd been at that dinner. She nodded, confirming the authenticity to those around her. $173,000, I said, my voice cutting through the horrified silence. "That's what I've given them over 7 years while being told I'm nothing. While they planned to steal the rest." My father lunged toward the microphone, but Graham Lowell stepped forward. I'd positioned him strategically. "Mr. Blake, I represent Ms. Bennett. Any further harassment will result in additional criminal charges beyond the fraud charges already being filed." "Criminal charges?" someone gasped. "Fraud, conspiracy, attempted financial abuse of a family member, illegal access to credit reports." Graham listed calmly. "The FBI takes these matters seriously when they cross state lines." I pulled out my final document. "This is a notarized statement showing I've transferred all my assets to a protected trust. Even if you'd succeeded in your guardianship scheme, there would have been nothing to steal. The woman who would never amount to anything was always 3 steps ahead." The room erupted. Guests pulled away from my parents as if they were contagious. Someone was recording on their phone by tomorrow. This would be everywhere. My parents' carefully cultivated reputation was disintegrating in real time. "You've destroyed us," my mother whispered into the microphone she'd grabbed, apparently forgetting it was still on. "No," I responded clearly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just brought receipts." I closed my portfolio and walked toward the exit, stopping only to address the room one last time. "They were right about one thing: I'm reliable. You can rely on me to tell the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts those who tried to hurt me first." The last sound I heard before the door closed was my father shouting at the country club manager, who was already informing him that his membership, the one I'd been paying for, had been terminated effective immediately. The legal machinery activated at 9 sharp Monday morning. Graham Lowell filed our complaint with the district court, 37 pages detailing fraud, conspiracy, and financial elder abuse in reverse, where the younger generation was the victim. The FBI's white-collar crime division was copied on everything involving the interstate financial transactions and credit report breaches. By noon, my parents' bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. The call came while I was in a meeting at Northfield Iris, had my parents' phones tapped legally now, with a court order Graham had secured based on the evidence of conspiracy. "What do you mean, frozen?" My father screamed at the bank manager. "I need to pay my lawyer." So, Dennis Vance, their sketchy attorney, had already dropped them after seeing the evidence package Graham sent him, complete with recordings of my parents discussing how to hide assets from the IRS. No legitimate lawyer would touch them now. The media picked up the story by Tuesday. Prominent local couple accused of attempting to defraud executive daughter ran in the Herald. Someone had leaked the country club video, probably one of the horrified guests, and it had gone viral on social media with the hashtag #NeverAmountToAnything. My mother's carefully maintained Facebook presence became a battlefield of condemned comments from people who'd once admired them. Emma called me at 2:15 that afternoon, crying. "The IRS came to my apartment. They're auditing everything. My accountant says I could face criminal charges for tax fraud." "You committed tax fraud," I responded flatly. "That's typically what triggers criminal charges." "You're my sister," she wailed. "No, I was your ATM. There's a difference." Michael tried a different approach, showing up at my office Wednesday morning. Security stopped him in the lobby. I'd anticipated this and had him placed on the no-entry list. "Laura, please," he pleaded through the phone when security called up. "They're our parents. They're being eviscerated. Mom hasn't left her bedroom in 3 days. Then she's finally experiencing a fraction of the isolation she tried to force on me," I said, then hung up. The forensic accounting report Sam Carter completed was devastating in its thoroughness. He'd uncovered something even I hadn't known. My parents had taken out credit cards in my name when I was in college, maxed them out, and only made minimum payments for years, destroying my early credit. It had taken me a decade to repair that damage while never knowing the source. Thursday brought the first real legal consequence. My parents were served with criminal summons at 6:45 in the evening. The server, knowing the high-profile nature of the case, had brought a witness and a videographer. My mother answered the door in her bathrobe, no makeup, looking every day of her 68 years without her usual armor of cosmetics and pretense. "Evelyn Blake, you're being summoned to appear in court to answer charges of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation," the server announced clearly. The video was on the news by 11 that night. Graham called Friday morning with an update. "The district attorney wants to proceed with criminal prosecution. The evidence is overwhelming. Your parents are looking at potential prison time, probably probation given their age and lack of prior convictions. But prison time is possible." "And financially?" I asked. "The civil suit will destroy them. We're seeking damages of 3 times the amount stolen, plus punitive damages for emotional distress. With what they owe the IRS for their own tax fraud, they've been hiding income for years. It turns out they'll lose everything: the house, the cars, any savings they've hidden." That afternoon, a different video surfaced someone had been recording at previous family dinners, capturing dozens of instances of my parents belittling me while I paid the check. A compilation video titled "The Real Parasites" garnered 2 million views in 8 hours. Local news picked up the story. Financial abuse in reverse. When parents exploit successful children became a talking point on morning shows. Expert psychologists analyzed the dynamics of narcissistic parents who demean their children while simultaneously exploiting them. My phone had 500 text messages and 300 emails from extended family, former friends, and acquaintances. Most supported me now, claiming they'd always suspected something was off about my parents. The same people who'd laughed at their jokes about my inadequacy were now eager to distance themselves from the scandal. The country club formally expelled my parents Monday afternoon, sending a letter stating their behavior was inconsistent with the values of our establishment. The charity boards my mother sat on, positions she'd bought with my money, requested her immediate resignation. The investment club my father pretended to run discovered he'd been embezzling funds there too, leading to additional charges. By the end of the week, Evelyn and Martin Blake were pariahs. Their social standing, built on my money and maintained through my humiliation, had evaporated completely. Emma's boutique was shuttered, seized by the IRS. Michael, though not criminally charged, was terminated from his job when his employer discovered he'd been complicit in the scheme. Several emails showed he'd helped create false documentation about my mental state. "They're finished," Iris reported Saturday morning. "Financially, socially, legally, there's no coming back from this." I felt no joy, just a cold satisfaction. They'd wanted me to amount to nothing. Instead, their nothing had amounted to everything: evidence, justice, and consequences they'd never escape. The final act took place in the Grandview Conference Center, a deliberately public venue I'd rented for $30,000 money I'd have once given my parents without question. 2 weeks after the criminal summons, I invited everyone: family, their former friends, business associates, neighbors, and journalists. The invitation read simply, "Truth and Consequences, a Final Accounting, 2 p.m. Sunday." They came, all of them drawn by morbid curiosity and the promise of witnessing the complete destruction of the Blake family myth. I'd arranged the room like a tribunal, a long table at the front where I sat with Graham Lowell, Sam Carter, and Iris Marlowe. A projection screen behind us, 150 chairs facing forward, everyone filled by 1:45. My parents arrived with a court-appointed attorney, looking diminished in their dated formal wear. They'd sold their designer clothing to pay legal fees. Emma shuffled in behind them, eyes downcast. Michael sat apart, isolated by his shame. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. "Today, We closed the book on a 43-year fiction. The screen lit up with the first slide, a photograph of 5-year-old me, smiling gap-toothed at a birthday party. This is when it started, the systematic diminishment of a daughter whose only crime was being useful. Sam took over, his accountant's precision cutting through emotion. Total funds transferred from Laura Bennett to Evelyn and Martin Blake $173,432. To Emma Blake $31,800. To Michael Blake $60,200. Total extracted through fraud, including credit cards opened in Laura's name $48,900. Each number appeared on screen with corresponding bank records. The crowd murmured at the scale. Iris presented next. Through surveillance authorized by court order, we documented 212 instances of deliberate defamation over 24 months. She played a compilation my parents at various gatherings, each clip showing them diminishing me while spending my money. The cumulative effect was devastating. But here's what you didn't know, Iris continued, displaying new evidence. They'd been planning this for 15 years. She showed emails from 2010 my parents discussing how to maximize Laura's utility while ensuring she remained psychologically dependent through strategic undermining. Gasps echoed through the room. Even I hadn't known it went back that far. Graham stood for the legal summary. Criminal charges filed 8 counts of fraud, 3 counts of conspiracy, 2 counts of identity theft, 1 count of attempted financial exploitation of a dependent adult, ironically. The law they tried to use against Laura. Civil damages sought $2.3 million. That's everything we have, my father shouted, standing abruptly. The house, retirement, everything. Yes, I said simply. It is. I walked to the podium for my final statement. You called me nothing, said I'd never amount to anything, told everyone I was just a sedan, reliable but ordinary. So I decided to show you what ordinary looks like when it stops being reliable for people who don't deserve it. The screen changed to a legal document. This is my new will and testament. Originally, despite everything, you were still beneficiaries. That ends today. I clicked to the next slide. The Bennett Family Foundation, established with my entire estate. It will provide scholarships for students whose parents tell them they'll never amount to anything. Your legacy won't be the money you stole or the lies you told. It'll be the success of every child who proves their parents wrong, funded by your downfall. My mother broke then, sobbing theatrically. How can you be so cruel? Cruel. I pulled out a folder, extracting one final document. This is a psychiatric evaluation you had done on me when I was 12. You wanted to have me diagnosed with a learning disability to get Social Security benefits. The doctor refused, noting I tested in the 99th percentile. You never told me. You let me think I was slow, inadequate, less than... The room was silent except for my mother's genuine tears now, not for what she'd done, but for being exposed. Here's what happens next, I announced. You'll face trial, you'll likely get probation, but you'll be convicted felons. You'll lose the house to pay civil damages and IRS penalties. You'll live on Social Security in a small apartment, experiencing the financial insecurity you always claimed to fear, but never actually knew because I was always there to catch you. I looked directly at them for the last time. And you'll know, every single day, that the daughter you said would never amount to anything took everything you had, using nothing but the truth and the skills you mocked organization, attention to detail, and the ability to see 3 moves ahead. I gathered my papers and walked toward the exit, stopping for one final statement. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And after today, you'll receive exactly what you gave me for 43 years, nothing. The last image on the screen as I left was their own words from that dinner. Laura will never amount to anything significant. Below it, my response, I just did. The rain started as I stepped outside the conference center, soft at first, then steadier. I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me, feeling the weight of 43 years sliding off my shoulders like water off glass. My phone buzzed with messages I wouldn't read, calls I wouldn't answer. The Blakes, I couldn't think of them as parents anymore, were someone else's problem now. The courts would handle them. The IRS would pursue them. Their former friends would dissect them over wine and whispers. I walked to my car, a modest Tesla I'd bought myself last year, the first truly extravagant purchase I'd ever made just for me. The leather seats still smelled new. The silence inside felt like a sanctuary. I sat there, engine off, watching the rain streak down the windshield, and realized I was smiling, not the bitter smile of revenge accomplished, but something lighter, cleaner. My phone showed 3:17 p.m. On any other Sunday, I'd be at their house now, enduring another dinner where they'd eat food I'd paid for while explaining my inadequacies to whoever would listen. Instead, I was free. The word felt foreign in my mouth when I said it aloud. Free. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through downtown. The city looked different somehow, sharper, more vivid. Maybe it was the rain, or maybe it was seeing the world without the filter of their contempt. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the reliable sedan they'd described. She was something they never understood, a force that had been compressed for so long that when finally released, it destroyed everything that had tried to contain it. Back in my apartment, I made coffee, good coffee, the expensive kind I'd started buying only recently, and stood at my window watching the city lights blur through the rain. The minimalist space that had once felt empty now felt purposeful, chosen, mine. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every decision in this room was mine alone, untainted by their judgment. I thought about the title they'd all remember. At dinner, my parents told everyone I'd never amount to anything, so I just became everything they feared, so I just took back my story, so I just proved that nothing, when pushed far enough, becomes something unstoppable. The coffee was still warm in my hands when I realized I felt no guilt. They'd raised me to feel guilty for existing, for succeeding, for not being enough while simultaneously being too much. But guilt requires believing you've done something wrong, and protecting yourself from parasites even when they share your DNA isn't wrong. It's survival. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The legal proceedings would drag on for months. There would be depositions, court appearances, media coverage. Extended family would choose sides. Some would call me cruel, heartless, vindictive. They'd be right about the last one. Vindication and vindictive share a root for a reason. But tonight, in the quiet of my apartment with rain pattering against the windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 43 years, complete ownership of my own life. No one to apologize to, no one to pay for, no one to convince of my worth. The woman who would never amount to anything had amounted to exactly what she was meant to be: free. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. Not a legal document or financial report, but something new. A book, maybe, or just a record for myself. The first line came easily. I spent 43 years believing their story about me. Then I remembered I was the only one holding the pen. The rain had stopped. Through the clearing clouds, stars began to appear, tiny points of light that had been there all along, just waiting for the storm to pass to be seen. I raised my coffee cup to them, to myself, to the nothing that had finally become something. At dinner, my parents told everyone I'd never amount to anything. I said to the empty room, completing the sentence that had started this journey. So I just returned the favor and left them with exactly that nothing. The city hummed below, indifferent and beautiful. Somewhere out there, the Blakes were facing their first night in their new reality. But here, in my space, with my choices and my freedom, I was finally home. Not the home they'd made for me out of obligation and criticism, but the one I'd built myself from truth and consequence. I closed my laptop, finished my coffee, and went to bed early. For the first time in my adult life, I had no one else's crisis to solve tomorrow. The thought was terrifying and perfect, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you'd had wings all along. The woman who'd never amount to anything smiled in the dark. She'd amounted to something after all herself, completely and unapologetically herself. Thank you for listening to this story of transformation and justice. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to diminish your worth? How did you reclaim your power? Your stories matter, and I'd be honored to read them in the comments below.